On the NDAA, I looked at this, and I'm probably one of those. I probably looked at this really from a perspective of this is a federal issue. When the Patriot Act first came up, and I know that we were asked to do a resolution in the city of Springfield as mayor, I said no, this is a federal issue. One of the museums I chose to go through, and a lot of it's because my own personal heritage, was a Holocaust museum. And the reason why I bring this up, because you know what happened? Folks turned a blind eye and didn't do anything. And people even in Western Europe had no idea what was going on in Germany. And so I will tell you that that experience probably changed my perspective on what you're bringing back to us 180 degrees. And because I think you're exactly right. If things would have happened more at a local level, it would have transformed up to higher up into more of the national level in what that perspective. I know I'll save my comments as we go through the work session. I'll leave it up to Chair Farr on whether he will allow folks from NDAA to sit in on the work session. I know from my experience that's really not what occurs, because it's really an opportunity for the staff to go back and forth with the commissioners, but the chair does have the ability to set the tone, and I am not the chair. So but so I really want to say thank you very much for bringing this back up. I think it's very important, and like I said, my grandfather was a Ukrainian Jew. His family escaped. Joe Lawrence knows my family extremely well down in Roseburg, and his family, before he was actually born in the United States, they escaped the Russian Revolution in 1905. The last name Leiken is inscribed on Ellis Island. Thank you.
To ask the board to consider in adopting a resolution encouraging changes to the sections in the National Defense Act of 2012 under sections 1021, 1022, as Mr. Osborne had clearly articulated in his public comment. I'm asking the board to schedule what they think is appropriate. I would believe that we either need a work session or an agenda item to have this come before the board for potential adoption. I got multiple resolutions here that I think staff could potentially go through and give us a starting point as to a resolution, or if not, use one that's already prepared. Commissioner Sorenson, with his letter, very detailed. It appears has a great knowledge of concern and points that could be brought up. And then also, should this item be have some public comment or a public hearing attached to it, I think that it probably should, from the standpoint that it's one thing to pass a resolution from the board here, but to we're trying to encourage the state and the federal government to make some changes, and if we can show that there was an enormous support of public comment for this, and I think it potentially could be a stronger message to our state and federal folks. And I just state that I try. One of the things in here that was pretty clear to me was there are provisions in there that are very disturbing, and then there's other pieces in here that make statements that this doesn't affect certain individuals. But one thing I've learned on this board in the time I've served here, that unless we're very clear and concise with the intents, we find ourselves in some very difficult situations. And we've done that. I find that in some of our land use decisions. Our code sometimes can be a little bit clear. It feels like it means one certain thing, and it probably promoted that it means one certain thing, and then the next thing you know, it's being applied in a different way that didn't even people didn't conceive. And I think in a time where our country is really divided, and it's I think assurances to the citizens that we want clear, concise, and we know what's going to happen, and not some language that appears it could be interpreted and applied in certain other manners. So I would recommend and ask that we either set a work session or we have an agenda item where we can look at potentially adopting this, and also with some public comment involved.
I'd just like to say real quick, this is an issue that's been on my radar for a while. It was great to share the program with Shane when I spoke about the jail levy to an organization, and that's how I kind of learned a lot about it, listening to Shane talk to this group. And at that time I asked Shane if he'd be willing to talk to Commissioner Sorenson about it, because I kind of thought it was something that we could agree on very easily. And Shane ultimately met with Commissioner Sorenson, and things have moved forward from there. I do think that we have said that we'll look at a work session in the future. We kind of wanted to get this letter done first, because we have the pending action in the Senate right now, and an opportunity to give our senators some backup of a full county commission board saying we want change. As they talk to their colleagues, they can talk about all of the organizations and governmental institutions that have lobbied them to change the bill. And that's basically what this letter is about, is giving them even more, and an elected body at that represents over 350,000 people saying we want this law changed. So I appreciate this coming before us. I appreciate the efforts of all sorts of organizations from both sides of the aisle pushing for this, and I think it's a good letter, and I think there'll be continued work on this in the future.
Let me just say, first of all, that that just because someone is in a different role in our system of government doesn't mean that they have sort of limited their responsibilities to uphold our U.S. Constitution. All of the people in elective office take an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution. So it's not only judges that uphold the Constitution, it's all elected officials take an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution, at least in our country. And so when we have a law like the National Defense Authorization Act that has a real basic purpose, okay, for all of you that have heard this crowd is against the National Defense Authorization Act, that's not really true, because the National Defense Authorization Act is what funds our armed forces. So we're actually not against the National Defense Authorization Act. There are provisions in the law that's been passed by Congress, signed by the President, that have the unfortunate effect of allowing the military, the federal military, to incarcerate people in the United States, and they have no opportunity for any redress, no trial. They can be held indefinitely. And we know that that since a majority of the House and Senate passed the bill, since the President signed the bill, that laws that get passed in that fashion are presumed to be constitutional. But we have a method to test the constitutionality of laws, and that method is to go to a federal court and have a judge rule on it. And that's what's happened in this case, that a federal judge has ruled that the law is unconstitutional. So we shouldn't turn a blind eye to requests by the public to try to speak out on this. Now, we're fortunate in Oregon in that most of our members of Congress from Oregon and our 2 senators have voted against this, and they've been pretty forceful about it. And so in some ways we're preaching to our 1%. Oregon's about 1% of the national political scene. We're kind of preaching to the choir on our 1%. But I do think that more local governments that take this up, whether they're cities or counties, will have an opportunity to be noticed, and more people will see that the opposition to this kind of provision that's in Section 1021 and 1022 of the law, that we're speaking out against it. So I'm glad we're moving through this process. I know it takes a long time. I think that the board did get my letter that I wrote last spring, that I worked with various groups on to bring this more to the attention of the community, and I'm glad we're going to have the work session. I'm totally in favor of having more extensive work by the board on this so that we can get a really robust, vibrant, and informed resolution opposing this. Thank you.